The rain washed away the last traces of my tears as I rushed through the dimly lit streets of the financial district. My soaked uniform clung to my skin, the white cotton shirt now practically transparent. I'd lost my umbrella somewhere between the restaurant and the subway station, but that was the least of my problems. Being fired from my third job in 2 months felt like the universe was deliberately trying to break me. 3 weeks' worth of rent, I muttered, mentally calculating how long I could survive on my meager savings before I'd have to call my mother, something I'd sworn never to do again. Not after everything. The elegant restaurant where I'd been working as a waitress glowed behind me, its warm lights spilling onto the wet pavement like liquid gold. Salvatore's was the kind of place where a single meal cost more than what I made in a day. The kind of place where people like me served people who would never know what it felt like to check their bank account with their heart in their throat. My boss's words still rang in my ears. "I'm sorry, Ellie, but you broke a $600 bottle of wine. We can't afford your clumsiness." What he didn't know was that the bottle had slipped from my trembling hands because I'd spotted him at table 7. The man I'd been avoiding for months, my daughter's father. The man who'd disappeared when I told him I was pregnant, only to return a year later demanding to see his child after deciding fatherhood might suit him after all. I hadn't even given birth yet. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach, barely showing at 5 months. I'd managed to hide it with loose-fitting clothes and strategic apron placement, but I wouldn't be able to conceal it much longer. The subway entrance beckoned, promising shelter from the rain, but as I approached, my phone buzzed with a notification. Another email from my landlord about the rent increase. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. I was already behind on payments, and with no job, I'd soon be without a roof over my head. My chest tightened as panic began to set in. I couldn't bring my baby into a world where I couldn't even provide basic necessities. That's when I felt it. A strange sensation, like someone was watching me. I turned around, scanning the nearly deserted street. Through the curtain of rain, I noticed a sleek black car idling across the road, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. Something about it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It had been there when I'd left the restaurant, and it was still there now, engine running, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. I hurried down the subway steps, nearly slipping on the wet tiles. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pale glow over everything. I swiped my transit card, one of my last few rides before I'd need to reload it with money I didn't have. The platform was almost empty at this hour. A homeless man dozed on a bench, surrounded by plastic bags of belongings. A young couple stood wrapped in each other's arms near the edge, whispering and giggling. And at the far end, a man in an expensive suit checked his watch, radiating impatience. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact. In this city, attention was rarely something you wanted. The rumble of the approaching train vibrated through the soles of my worn sneakers. As it screeched to a halt, I waited for the doors to open, desperate to sit down and take the weight off my swollen feet. But just as I stepped forward, my phone slipped from my rain-slick fingers, clattering to the ground. I bent to retrieve it, my heart sinking when I saw the newly formed crack across its screen. Another expense I couldn't afford. As I straightened, something solid bumped into me from behind, sending me stumbling forward. Strong hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me before I could fall. "Careful there," a deep voice murmured close to my ear. The scent hit me first, expensive cologne with notes of cedar and something darker, more primal. It wrapped around me like a physical presence, drowning out the usual subway smells of urine and disinfectant. "I'm sorry," I mumbled automatically, trying to pull away, but the hands on my shoulders lingered a moment longer than necessary before releasing me. No harm done. I glanced up, intending to offer a polite smile before retreating, but the words died in my throat. He was devastatingly handsome in the way that beautiful predators are, all sharp lines and dangerous grace. Dark hair styled with careless precision, a strong jaw shadowed with precisely maintained stubble. But it was his eyes that held me captive. The color of whiskey in firelight, amber flecked with gold, watching me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, charcoal gray tailored to perfection, with a black shirt open at the collar revealing a glimpse of tanned skin. No tie. A heavy watch glinted on his wrist, and a signet ring adorned his right hand. Everything about him screamed power and wealth. "You're soaked," he observed, his gaze traveling down my body in a way that made me acutely aware of how my wet uniform revealed more than it concealed. I crossed my arms over my chest, heat rushing to my cheeks. "It's raining." The corner of his mouth curved upward. "So it is." The train doors started to close. I lunged forward to catch them, but I was too late. They shut with a definitive thud, and the train pulled away, leaving me stranded on the platform with the beautiful stranger. "Shit," I hissed under my breath, blinking back tears of frustration. "Where are you headed?" he asked, still standing too close. My instinct screamed at me not to answer, not to engage. This wasn't the kind of man who spoke to women like me without an agenda. But exhaustion and desperation clouded my judgment. "Upper East Side," I replied, immediately regretting the admission. The contrast between my appearance and my destination would raise questions I didn't want to answer. His eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite a commute from Little Italy." So he knew where Salvatore's was located. Had he been there tonight? I didn't remember seeing him, but then again, I'd been too focused on avoiding my ex and balancing trays of overpriced pasta to notice much else. "I go where the work is," I said vaguely. "And what kind of work do you do?" The question seemed innocent enough, but something in his tone made me think he already knew the answer. "I'm a waitress." I paused, then corrected myself. "I was a waitress. I got fired tonight." Why was I telling him this? Something about his steady gaze made me want to confess things I'd never tell a stranger. "That's unfortunate," he said, his expression unreadable. "May I ask why?" I laughed bitterly. I broke an expensive bottle of wine. "Apparently, that's an unforgivable sin when you work at Salvatore's. Salvatore can be unforgiving." He said the name with a familiarity that caught my attention. "You know the owner?" A smile played at his lips. "You could say that." The next train rumbled into the station, and I stepped toward it, eager to escape this unsettling conversation. But as the doors opened, the stranger's hand closed gently around my wrist. "Wait," he said. "I have a proposition for you." Warning bells clanged in my head. I'd heard stories about women who disappeared after accepting propositions from handsome strangers. I tried to pull away, but his grip, while not painful, was unyielding. "I'm not interested," I said firmly, my heart racing. To my surprise, he laughed. A rich, warm sound that echoed in the nearly empty station. "Not that kind of proposition, sweetheart. I'm offering you a job." I stared at him, confusion replacing fear. "A job? You don't even know me." "I know enough." His eyes dropped briefly to my abdomen, and I tensed. Could he tell I was pregnant? I thought I'd hidden it well. "I need an assistant," he continued smoothly. "Someone discreet. Someone who won't ask too many questions. The pay is good, very good, and the hours are flexible." The train doors closed again, but I hardly noticed. "What kind of assistant?" "Personal. You'd help manage my schedule, handle some correspondence, run errands." "Nothing illegal, if that's what you're worried about." It was exactly what I was worried about, along with 100 other things. Who offers a job to a stranger in a subway station? What kind of man needs an assistant who won't ask questions? But the words, "very good pay," echoed in my mind, drowning out the warning sirens. "I don't even know your name," I said weakly. He released my wrist and extended his hand. "Dante Russo." The name struck a chord of recognition, but I couldn't place it. I hesitated before placing my much smaller hand in his. "Eleanor Hayes. Everyone calls me Ellie." His hand was warm and calloused in unexpected places, not the soft grip of a man who'd never known physical labor. "Well, Eleanor Hayes, what do you say? Are you interested in hearing more about my offer?" I should have said no. I should have waited for the next train and gone home to my tiny apartment to figure out a more sensible solution to my problems. But sensible solutions seemed in short supply lately. "I'm listening," I said instead. A smile spread across his face, predatory, triumphant, as if he'd known all along what my answer would be. "Good. Let's go somewhere dry to discuss the details." Before I could respond, he placed his hand at the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit. That simple touch sent electricity up my spine. It had been so long since anyone had touched me with such casual confidence. "My car is outside," he said as we climbed the steps back to street level. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening under the streetlights. And there, exactly where I'd seen it earlier, was the sleek black car with the tinted windows. I froze. "That's your car?" It was parked outside Salvatore's. Dante's expression revealed nothing. "Was it?" "I have a driver." Perhaps he was waiting for me there. It was a reasonable explanation, but something felt off. Had he followed me? The thought should have terrified me, but instead, it sent a strange thrill through my body. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out from the driver's side and opened the rear door. His expressionless face and rigid posture screamed security more than chauffeur. "This is Marco," Dante said casually. "He drives for me." Marco nodded in acknowledgement but said nothing. Dante gestured toward the open door. "After you, Eleanor." Every instinct told me to run, to get as far away from this man as possible. But where would I run to? Back to my apartment that I couldn't afford? To my mother who'd made it clear she wanted nothing to do with me or my poor life choices? I climbed into the car, the leather seats butter-soft against my still damp clothes. The interior smelled of the same cologne Dante wore, mixed with leather, and the faintest hint of gunpowder, a scent I recognized from childhood trips to the shooting range with my father. That last detail should have been the final warning, the push I needed to climb back out and disappear into the night. Instead, I sat silently as Dante slid in beside me, close enough that our thighs almost touched. As Marco pulled away from the curb, Dante's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly before he answered. "Yes?" His voice was different now, colder, harder. He listened for a moment. "No. I told you how to handle it. Don't make me repeat myself." Another pause. "Then make him understand the consequences of refusal." He ended the call without saying goodbye, and turned to find me watching him, my eyes wide. "Sorry about that," he said, his tone warming again. "Business never stops in this city." "What kind of business are you in exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He studied me for a moment. "Import-export, primarily. Family business." It was vague enough to be meaningless. I'd heard that import-export was often code for something less legitimate, but I didn't press. After all, he'd mentioned he wanted someone who didn't ask questions. We drove through the city, the streets growing progressively more exclusive as we headed uptown. Finally, the car pulled up outside a towering glass building overlooking Central Park. "My apartment," Dante explained, as Marco opened the door. "We can discuss the details of your employment more comfortably there." Alarm bells rang distantly in my head, but the warmth of the car and the promise of financial security had lulled me into a dangerous complacency. Or perhaps it was just that after months of struggling alone, the idea of surrendering control to someone else, even temporarily, held an appeal I was ashamed to acknowledge. I stepped out of the car, looking up at the gleaming tower. How many rent payments would a single apartment in this building cost? 50? 100? "You're playing with fire, Ellie," whispered a voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother's. But I'd been cold for so long that even fire seemed welcoming. As we entered the lobby, the concierge nodded respectfully to Dante. "Good evening, Mr. Russo." "Evening, James. No visitors tonight." "Very good, sir." Dante guided me toward a private elevator at the back of the lobby, his hand returning to the small of my back with that same casual possessiveness. The doors closed, and we began to ascend. The mirrored walls of the elevator reflected us from every angle. Me, small and bedraggled in my waitress uniform, and him, tall and imposing in his perfect suit. "You're quiet," he observed, watching me through the mirror. I met his gaze in the reflection. "I'm trying to figure out why a man like you would offer a job to someone like me." "Someone like you." His eyebrow arched. "And what kind of person do you think you are, Eleanor Hayes?" The question caught me off guard. What kind of person was I? A struggling single mother-to-be? A college dropout? A disappointment to my family? "I'm nobody," I said finally. "Just another person trying to survive in this city." Something darkened in his eyes. "You're not nobody." The elevator stopped with a soft ding, opening directly into a stunning penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a breathtaking view of Central Park and the city skyline. The space was decorated in shades of gray and black, with occasional splashes of deep red. Modern, masculine, and undeniably expensive. I stood frozen in the elevator, suddenly very aware of what I was doing. I'd gotten into a car with a stranger. I'd come to his apartment. Alone. Second thoughts? Dante asked, holding the door open. This is crazy, I whispered. I don't know you. His smile was slow and deliberate. But you want to, don't you? Otherwise you wouldn't be here. He was right. And that terrified me more than anything else. I did want to know him, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd appeared like some dark guardian angel, just when I needed saving the most. I stepped into his domain, feeling like I'd crossed some invisible threshold from which there was no returning. Welcome to my home, Eleanor, he said, his voice dropping to a lower register that sent shivers down my spine. Now, let's talk about your future. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil himself, but as his amber eyes held mine, I realized that even knowing what I know now, I'd still make the same choice, because some fires are worth getting burned for. Dante's penthouse felt like another world, one where gravity worked differently and air cost money to breathe. I stood awkwardly near the elevator, afraid to touch anything, while he moved with easy confidence through the space, shedding his suit jacket and draping it over a sleek leather chair. Would you like something to drink? He asked, heading toward a bar that gleamed with crystal decanters. Water? Wine? Something stronger? Just water, please. My throat was suddenly parched. The reality of my situation, standing in a stranger's luxury apartment after dark, was finally catching up to me. He poured water into a crystal glass for me and some amber liquid. Whiskey, probably, for himself. When he handed me the glass, our fingers brushed, and I nearly jumped at the contact. Relax, Eleanor, he said, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have brought you to my home. Somehow, that wasn't as reassuring as he might have intended. Please, sit. He gestured toward a massive sectional sofa facing the windows. I perched on the edge of the couch, feeling like an intruder in this pristine space. My damp clothes were probably ruining the expensive fabric. Dante didn't sit beside me as I'd expected. Instead, he moved to stand by the windows, looking out at the glittering city below. With his back to me, silhouetted against the night sky, he seemed even more imposing. Tell me about yourself, Eleanor Hayes, he said without turning. There's not much to tell. I fidgeted with my glass. I grew up in Ohio. Came to New York for college, dropped out after 2 years, been working service jobs ever since. Family? I hesitated. My parents are still in Ohio. We're not close. Boyfriend? Husband? My hand instinctively went to my stomach. No, he turned then, his eyes dropping to where my hand rested. But there's a child. It wasn't a question. He knew. Somehow he already knew. 5 months, I admitted, seeing no point in lying. The father isn't involved. By choice? His or yours? Both, at first. Now he's changed his mind, but I don't want him back in our lives. Dante nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. And that's why you were fired tonight. You saw him at the restaurant. My eyes widened. How did you? You said you broke an expensive bottle of wine. People don't usually do that without a reason. He took a sip of his drink. What's his name? Why does it matter? I like to know who I'm dealing with. The implication that he might deal with my ex sent an unexpected thrill through me, followed immediately by alarm. His name is Ryan, I said carefully. Ryan Mercer. But I don't want you to. I can handle him myself. Dante's smile was cold. I'm sure you can. But sometimes, Eleanor, it's easier to let others handle problems for you. He crossed the room and sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Now, about this job. I straightened, trying to look professional despite my bedraggled appearance. Yes, the assistant position. I need someone I can trust, someone discreet. My business requires privacy. What exactly would I be doing? I asked. Managing my personal calendar, coordinating with my security team, running errands that require a delicate touch, accompanying me to certain events. Accompanying you? I repeated. Like a date? His laugh was sharp. No, Eleanor. If I wanted a date, I'd ask for one. This is business. Sometimes having a woman present changes the dynamics of a meeting, makes things less confrontational. I wasn't sure I liked the sound of that. And the pay? $10,000 a month, cash, plus this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card, placing it on the coffee table between us. What's that for? An apartment in this building, 15th floor, 2 bedrooms. It's one of my properties. You'll live there while you work for me. I stared at the key card, then at him. That's too much. Is it? His eyes held mine. You need a place to live. I need you available at all hours. It makes sense. My mind raced. $10,000 a month plus an apartment in one of the most exclusive buildings in Manhattan? It was beyond generous. It was suspicious. Why me? I asked bluntly. You could hire anyone. Someone with actual qualifications. Qualifications can be taught. Loyalty is innate. He leaned closer. And I think you're loyal, Eleanor Hayes. You strike me as someone who repays debts. There was something in his tone that made me shiver, though I wasn't cold. You make it sound like I'd be indebted to you. Wouldn't you? His voice was soft, almost hypnotic. A job. A home. Security for your child. That's quite a lot to give someone you've just met. He was right. I would be indebted to him, deeply, uncomfortably indebted. And something told me Dante Russo wasn't a man who forgot what was owed to him. When would I start? I asked, already knowing I was going to accept despite every warning bell in my head. Tonight. He stood, holding out his hand to me. Let me show you your new home. I hesitated only a moment before placing my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and firm, and he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. As we rode the elevator down to the 15th floor, I tried to process how drastically my life had changed in the span of a few hours. This morning, I'd been a pregnant, jobless waitress on the verge of eviction. Now I was... what? The personal assistant to a mysterious, wealthy man who offered apartments to strangers in subway stations. The elevator doors opened to a hallway with only 2 doors, one at each end. I own the entire floor, Dante explained, leading me to the door on the right. This will be your apartment. I have access, of course, but your privacy will be respected. He used the key card to open the door, then stepped back to allow me to enter first. The apartment was stunning, all clean lines and modern elegance, decorated in soft grays and blues. It was smaller than Dante's penthouse, but still larger than any place I'd ever lived. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same spectacular view of the park. The furniture looked new and untouched, as if no one had ever sat on the sofa or eaten at the dining table. This is... incredible, I breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. The master bedroom is through there, Dante pointed. The second bedroom can be a nursery. There's a fully stocked kitchen, though I suspect you'll be dining with me often. My housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez, will clean twice a week. I wandered through the apartment in a daze, trailing my fingers over smooth countertops and soft furnishings. When I reached the master bedroom, I gasped. The bed was enormous, draped in what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets. A walk-in closet stood open, completely empty, waiting to be filled. Dante appeared in the doorway behind me. Is it acceptable? Acceptable? It's like a dream. I turned to face him, but I don't have anything to put in it. All my stuff is at my old apartment. Give Marco your address. He'll have your belongings moved tomorrow. He checked his watch, that heavy, expensive timepiece I'd noticed earlier. It's late. You should rest. There are new clothes in the bathroom. Mrs. Alvarez picked them up this afternoon. This afternoon? Before he'd even met me? You planned all this, I said, realization dawning. Meeting me at the subway wasn't an accident. Something flashed in his eyes, approval, perhaps. Very good, Eleanor. No, it wasn't an accident. How did you know about me? Why me? He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Let's just say I've been aware of you for some time. Your situation interested me. My situation? I repeated. You mean being pregnant and desperate? I mean being resilient and proud despite facing adversity. His hand rose to my face, his thumb lightly tracing my cheekbone. You remind me of someone I once knew. The touch was electric, sending warmth cascading through my body. I stepped back, needing distance from this magnetic pull he seemed to exert. Who? I asked, my voice embarrassingly breathless. That's a story for another time. His hand dropped back to his side. Tomorrow, we begin. I'll send Marco to collect you at 9. Wear something professional. The clothes in the bathroom should suffice until we can get you a proper wardrobe. He turned to leave, but I called after him. Wait, I still have questions. Dante paused in the doorway, looking back over his shoulder, and I'll answer them. Tomorrow. For now, rest. You're safe here, Eleanor. After he left, I stood in the center of the bedroom, my bedroom, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Part of me wanted to run, to grab whatever cash I had and disappear before I became any further entangled with Dante Russo. But where would I go? And how far would I get before he found me? Because he would find me. I was certain of that. Instead of running, I went to the bathroom and found, as promised, new clothes laid out for me. Silk pajamas, underwear still in packaging, even a fluffy robe, everything in my size. I should have been creeped out by the invasion of privacy, but I was too exhausted to muster the appropriate outrage. I showered in a bathroom bigger than my entire studio apartment, letting hot water wash away the grime of the day. As I dried off and slipped into the silk pajamas, I caught sight of myself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. With my wet hair and wide eyes, I looked young and vulnerable. But there was something else there too, a spark of determination that hadn't been there this morning. I placed my hand on my slightly rounded belly. We're going to be okay, I whispered to my unborn child. I'll figure this out. But as I climbed into the ridiculously comfortable bed and sank into sheets that probably cost more than a month's rent at my old place, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal that would be impossible to escape. In my dreams that night, I was running through endless corridors, pursued by a shadow with amber eyes. No matter how fast I ran, it stayed right behind me, whispering, "You shouldn't play with fire, Eleanor." But even in the dream, I knew I already was. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the ceiling too high. Then memories of the previous night came flooding back. Dante Russo, the job offer, this apartment. I sat up slowly, half expecting to find myself back in my cramped studio, the entire encounter nothing but a desperate dream. But the luxurious bedroom remained solid around me, the sheets whispering against my skin as real as anything I'd ever felt. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, another unfamiliar addition to my morning routine. When I checked it, I found a text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Eleanor. Car will collect you at 8:45 instead of 9 now. Wear the gray dress. D." How did he have my number? I hadn't given it to him. Then again, he seemed to know everything else about me. My size, my situation, even where I'd been working. I should have been terrified by the surveillance implications, but something darker and more complicated stirred inside me instead. There was a strange comfort in being seen so completely after months of feeling invisible. In the closet, I found the gray dress he'd mentioned hanging in otherwise empty space. It was simple, but elegant. The kind of thing worn by women who attended charity galas and board meetings, not former waitresses from Ohio. Beside it hung a pair of black heels that looked both expensive and uncomfortable. After showering, I slipped into the dress, surprised by how perfectly it fit, hugging my curves but cleverly disguising my small baby bump. The reflection in the mirror showed someone I barely recognized, a polished, professional woman ready to take on Manhattan. "Not bad for someone who got fired yesterday," I murmured to my reflection. At precisely 8:45, my phone buzzed again, waiting downstairs. Marco. The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descending into a new life. I mentally rehearsed how to address Dante. Mr. Russo seemed appropriate given our new professional relationship, and reminded myself to ask about my actual duties. So far, this job had been long on perks and short on specifics. Marco stood by the same black car, his expression as blank as it had been last night. He opened the door without a word, and I slid into the back seat expecting to find Dante waiting. He wasn't there. "Where's Mr. Russo?" I asked as Marco got behind the wheel. "Meeting downtown. I'm taking you to the office first." I didn't know Dante had an office. Then again, there was a lot I didn't know about my new employer. We drove in silence, weaving through morning traffic with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this route countless times. I watched the city transform around us, from the manicured elegance of the Upper East Side to the towering glass canyons of Midtown, and finally into the more historic architecture of the financial district. The car pulled up outside an understated building with no company name displayed. Marco led me through a private entrance and into an elevator that required a key card. We rode to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, I expected a typical corporate office: cubicles, conference rooms, perhaps a reception desk. Instead, I stepped into what looked more like an exclusive club. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and subtle lighting created an atmosphere of masculine luxury. A few well-dressed men sat in conversation, falling silent as Marco led me through. Their eyes followed me, assessing, curious, and in some cases openly appreciative. I straightened my spine and lifted my chin, refusing to be intimidated. Marco stopped before an ornate wooden door and knocked once before opening it. "Ms. Hayes is here, sir." Dante sat behind a massive desk, phone to his ear, looking every bit the powerful executive in a charcoal suit and blood-red tie. He motioned for me to enter but continued his conversation. "I don't care what he thinks he's entitled to," he was saying, his voice hard as stone. The terms were clear. If he can't honor them, then perhaps he needs a reminder of who he's dealing with. I stood awkwardly by the door, unsure where to look or what to do with my hands. The office was impeccably decorated, more art gallery than workplace, with what looked like original paintings on the walls and sculptures displayed in glass cases. "Have Vito pay him a visit," Dante continued. Nothing dramatic, just enough to refresh his memory. He ended the call and finally looked up at me, his expression softening fractionally. "Eleanor, right on time." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. We have a lot to cover." I sat, smoothing the gray dress over my knees. "Good morning, Mr. Russo." His mouth quirked in amusement. "Mr. Russo? Last night it was Dante. Last night I wasn't officially your employee." "Fair enough." He leaned back, studying me. "The dress suits you." "Thank you." I folded my hands in my lap to keep them from fidgeting. "I'm ready to learn about my duties." "Straight to business. I like that." He pushed a sleek laptop across the desk toward me. "This is yours. Everything you need to know about the day-to-day operations is on there. Calendar, contacts, security protocols." I opened the laptop, finding it already powered on and unlocked. The screen showed a meticulously organized calendar, filled with appointments and meetings. "You'll be responsible for managing my schedule, both business and personal, making reservations, coordinating with my security team, handling correspondence." He paused. "And occasionally attending meetings with me, as we discussed." I nodded, scrolling through the calendar. Most entries were vague: meeting with V, dinner at S, warehouse inspection, nothing that gave away the nature of Dante's business. "What exactly is it that you do, Mr. Russo?" I asked, looking up from the screen. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "I thought we established that you wouldn't ask too many questions. I'm not asking about specific operations. I just want to know what kind of business I'm supporting." He studied me for a long moment. "Import-export, as I mentioned. Luxury goods primarily. Wine, art, specialty foods. My family has been in the business for generations." It sounded legitimate enough, but the way he said it, carefully controlled, revealing nothing, made me suspect there was more to it. "And these men outside?" I gestured toward the door. "Are they all part of your import-export business?" "They're associates. Some family, some not." He leaned forward. "You'll meet them all eventually. For now, just remember that they report to me, not the other way around." Before I could ask another question, the door opened without a knock. A tall, strikingly handsome man with the same amber eyes as Dante strode in, coming to an abrupt halt when he saw me. "Sorry, brother." Didn't realize you had company. His gaze traveled over me with undisguised interest. Very pretty company. Dante's expression hardened. Eleanor, this is my brother Lorenzo. Lorenzo, this is my new personal assistant, Ms. Hayes. Lorenzo's eyebrows shot up. Personal assistant? Is that what we're calling it now? Heat rushed to my face as I understood the implication. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Russo, I said stiffly, extending my hand. He took it, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a way that was definitely not professional. The pleasure is entirely mine, Ms. Hayes. That's enough, Lorenzo. Dante's voice cut like a blade. What do you need? Lorenzo released my hand reluctantly. The shipment from Sicily arrived. There's a discrepancy in the inventory. Dante's jaw tightened. I'll handle it. He turned to me. Eleanor, take the laptop to my private office next door. Review the calendar and familiarize yourself with the contacts. I'll join you shortly. I gathered the laptop, eager to escape the sudden tension in the room. As I passed Lorenzo, he winked at me, prompting a dark look from Dante that I pretended not to notice. The adjacent office was smaller but no less impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the harbor, and the furnishings were more modern than in the main office. I settled at a sleek desk that I assumed was meant for me and opened the laptop again. The calendar was packed with appointments, many of them recurring. Weekly meetings with names like Gambino, Tartaglia, and Veneto. Something about those names tickled the back of my mind, but I couldn't place why they seemed familiar. The contacts list was equally cryptic. Hundreds of names, many with only initials or nicknames, each assigned a color code whose meaning wasn't explained. Red seemed to be reserved for family members, Dante, Lorenzo, and others sharing the Russo surname. Blue appeared to be business associates. Yellow, government officials. Green, I couldn't determine. I was so absorbed in trying to decode the system that I didn't hear the door open. When Dante spoke from directly behind me, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Finding everything all right? I turned to find him standing much closer than I expected, his expression unreadable. Yes, just trying to understand the organization system. You'll learn it quickly enough. He placed a hand on the back of my chair, leaning over me to look at the screen. His cologne enveloped me, that same intoxicating scent from last night. Red is family. Blue is business. Yellow is friends in useful positions. Green is potential problems. Problems? Competitors. Former associates who've become unreliable. His eyes met mine. People who might try to use you to get to me. A chill ran down my spine. Use me? Why would anyone do that? He straightened, moving around the desk to sit on its edge, facing me. Because that's what people do, Eleanor. They look for leverage, for weaknesses to exploit. And you think I'm a weakness? The idea was both flattering and terrifying. I think you could be, if I let you. His gaze was intense, searching. Are you having second thoughts? I should have been. Any rational person would be running for the door by now. But instead, I shook my head. No, I made a commitment. Something like approval flickered across his face. Good. Now, there's something important we need to discuss. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Your cover story. Cover story? I repeated, eyeing the box warily. He opened it, revealing a stunning diamond ring. In certain circles, a personal assistant raises questions, unwanted attention. A fiancé, on the other hand. I stared at the ring, then at him. Sure, I had misunderstood. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? Only in specific situations. Business dinners, family events. He removed the ring from the box and held it out. It's just for show, Eleanor. A way to protect you. Protect me from what? My voice had risen despite my efforts to stay calm. From men like my brother. His expression darkened. From men who might see you as a way to get to me. I didn't take the ring. This wasn't part of our agreement. Our agreement was that you would assist me as needed. This is what I need. He took my left hand before I could pull away, sliding the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like everything else he'd given me. Consider it part of your uniform. The weight of the diamond was substantial, catching the light with every movement of my hand. It should have felt wrong, deceptive, manipulative, but some traitorous part of me thrilled at the sight of it on my finger, at the idea of being claimed, even if only for show. When would I need to perform this role? I asked, unable to tear my eyes from the ring. Tonight? For starters, family dinner at my mother's house. He stood, straightening his cufflinks. She's eager to meet the woman who's carrying her grandchild. My head snapped up. What? His smile was predatory. Did I forget to mention that part of your cover story? As far as my family is concerned, the baby is mine. Absolutely not. I stood up so quickly the chair rolled back and hit the wall. That wasn't part of our deal. I won't use my child as part of some charade. Dante remained perfectly still, watching my outburst with that unnerving calm. Sit down, Eleanor. No. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I agreed to be your assistant, not to lie about my baby's paternity. It's a necessary precaution, he said, his tone maddeningly reasonable. My family is traditional. They wouldn't understand our actual arrangement. Then tell them I'm just your employee. An unmarried, pregnant employee living in my building? That would raise even more questions. He stepped closer, his presence filling the room. Besides, this protects your child as well. How does lying about my baby's father protect them? His eyes hardened. Because being my child means protection. Resources. Status. Being Ryan Mercer's child means nothing. The mention of Ryan's name stopped me cold. How do you know about Ryan? I told you, Eleanor. I've been aware of you for some time. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in that proprietary way that was becoming disturbingly familiar. Ryan Mercer is a small-time drug dealer with gambling debts and a temper. Not father material. Ice flooded my veins. How do you know all this? I make it my business to know things. Especially about people who interest me. His thumb traced my lower lip, and to my shame, I didn't pull away. Ryan's been trying to find you. Did you know that? He's been asking questions, threatening your former co-workers. Fear gripped my heart. I'd changed my phone number, moved apartments twice, all to stay ahead of Ryan's increasingly desperate attempts to reconnect. If Dante knew this much, was it possible Ryan would find me too? What does he want? I whispered. He claims he wants to be a father to his child. Dante's expression darkened, but his sudden interest coincided with learning your grandmother left you a small inheritance. He thinks there's money he can access through you and the baby. My grandmother had indeed left me some money. Not a fortune, but enough to help with the baby and maybe finish my degree someday. I hadn't touched it yet, saving it for emergencies. How could he possibly know about that? I never told him. People talk, and money has a way of attracting attention. Dante's hand dropped from my face. If you're publicly connected to me, if everyone believes that child is mine, Ryan will back off. He won't dare cross me. The implication hung in the air between us. Who exactly was Dante Russo that even the mention of his name would scare off someone as reckless as Ryan? Who are you? I asked softly. Really? Something shifted in his eyes, a moment of calculation, of decision. You're smart, Eleanor. I think you've already figured it out. The pieces had been there all along. The security, the cryptic business dealings, the way people deferred to him, names like Gambino and Tartaglia in his contacts. It should have terrified me, but somehow, I'd known from the moment I saw him in that subway station. You're not just an import-export, I said carefully. His smile was sharp. Not just, no, you're family. You're connected. Connected. He seemed amused by my choice of words. Yes, you could say that. The Russo family has been connected in New York for generations. I sank back into my chair as the full reality of my situation hit me. I was working for, living in a building owned by, wearing a ring given to me by a man who was almost certainly part of organized crime. Is this where you run? Dante asked, watching me closely. Now that you know? That was the rational response, to get as far away from him as possible. But where would I go? Back to my unaffordable apartment? Back to dodging Ryan and creditors? Back to struggling alone? No, I said finally, surprising us both. I'm not running. Relief flickered across his face, so brief I almost missed it. Good. Then we understand each other. I looked down at the diamond ring glittering on my finger. I'll play along with this. Engagement. But I need some ground rules. I'm listening. First, this is temporary. When the baby is born, we break up, and I go back to being just your assistant. He nodded slowly. Acceptable, though we'll need a believable reason for the separation. Second, I won't lie to my child. When they're old enough to understand, I'll tell them the truth about their father. And what truth is that? His voice was dangerously soft. I met his gaze squarely. That Ryan Mercer is their biological father, but that he wasn't ready to be a parent. Dante considered this for a long moment. Agreed, when the time comes. Anything else? I swallowed hard before voicing my final condition. This stays professional between us. No expectations beyond what we've discussed. Something dark and hungry flashed in his eyes. Are you saying you don't find me attractive, Eleanor? Heat rushed to my face. That's not relevant to our arrangement. Oh, I think it's very relevant. He moved closer, until he was standing directly in front of me, his legs nearly touching my knees, especially if we're going to convince my family we're engaged. We can act, I insisted, trying to ignore the way my heart raced at his proximity. Can we? My mother is very perceptive. She'd notice if her future daughter-in-law flinched every time her son touched her. He reached down, taking my hand and pulling me to my feet, so we were standing chest to chest. We should practice. For authenticity. Before I could protest, his arm slid around my waist, pulling me against him. His other hand cupped my face, tilting it up toward his. For one breathless moment, I thought he was going to kiss me, and God help me, I wanted him to. Instead, he leaned down and whispered against my ear, "Remember, Eleanor, this is just business." He released me and stepped back, leaving me flushed and unsteady. The car will pick you up at 7. Wear the black dress in your closet. My mother appreciates punctuality. With that, he strode from the office, leaving me to collapse back into my chair on shaking legs. I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on learning Dante's schedule and systems, but my mind kept returning to that moment. His arm around my waist, his breath against my ear, the heat of his body pressed to mine. It had been a demonstration, a power play, nothing more. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. At precisely 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text. "Return to your apartment to prepare for dinner. The dress is laid out. D." Sure enough, when I arrived back at my apartment, it was still strange to think of the luxurious space as mine. A black cocktail dress was hanging on the bedroom door. It was elegant but understated. Exactly the sort of thing a well-bred fiancé might wear to a family dinner. As I showered and dressed, I tried to prepare myself for the evening ahead. What kind of woman was Dante's mother? What would she expect from the woman supposedly carrying her grandchild? And how would I explain my obvious lack of knowledge about her son? The dress fit perfectly, of course. It skimmed over my curves and small bump without emphasizing or hiding my pregnancy. When paired with the modest heels and diamond ring, I looked like I belonged in Dante's world. Or at least like I could convincingly fake it for an evening. My phone buzzed again at 6:55. Waiting downstairs. Not Marco this time, Dante himself. When I stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, I found him standing by the entrance, hands in the pockets of what was clearly an exceptionally expensive suit. His eyes traveled over me slowly, appreciatively, before meeting mine. "Perfect," he said simply. Outside, the now familiar black car waited, but no Marco in sight. "You're driving?" I asked, as Dante opened the passenger door for me. I always drive myself to my mother's house. He helped me into the car, his hand lingering on mine. Family tradition. Once we were driving through the city, Dante began briefing me on what to expect. "My mother's name is Sophia. She lives in the family home in Westchester. It was my father's before he passed 10 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. He glanced at me, something unreadable in his expression. "Don't be." He wasn't a good man. The blunt assessment surprised me. "And your mother?" "She's complicated. Traditional in some ways, surprisingly modern in others. She'll be polite to you, but reserve judgment until she decides if you're good enough for her son." "How did we meet?" I asked, realizing we needed a better story than the truth. "At Salvatore's. I saw you serving tables and was immediately taken with you." His mouth quirked. "That part's true enough. And our whirlwind romance, the quick engagement? We've been dating secretly for 6 months. The engagement happened when we found out about the baby." He reached over, his hand settling possessively on my knee. A surprise but happy accident. I tried not to react to his touch. Who else will be there tonight? Lorenzo, unfortunately. My younger sister Valentina, possibly my uncle Giorgio and his wife. His expression hardened slightly. Giorgio is my father's brother. He helps run certain aspects of the family business. Do they all know about me? The baby? They know I'm bringing my pregnant fiancé to meet the family. Details beyond that are none of their business. As we drove through the gates of what could only be described as an estate, my anxiety peaked. The house, mansion really, was an imposing stone structure set against manicured grounds illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. "Dante," I said, my voice tight with panic. "I don't think I can do this." He pulled the car to a stop in the circular driveway and turned to face me. "Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think, Eleanor." His hand moved from my knee to cup my cheek. "Just follow my lead, and remember what this means for you and your child. Protection, security, a future." I leaned into his touch despite myself. "What if they don't believe we're really engaged? Then I'll make them believe it." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "Do you trust me?" The strange thing was, I did. At least in this. "Yes." Without warning, he leaned forward and kissed me. Not the gentle, testing kiss I might have expected, but something deeper, more possessive. His hand slid to the back of my neck, holding me in place as his mouth claimed mine. I should have pulled away, should have reminded him of our agreement. Professional only. Instead, I found myself responding, my lips parting under his, my hand clutching his arm for support. When he finally broke the kiss, we were both breathing hard. "There," he said, his voice rough. "Now you look like a woman who's been thoroughly kissed by her fiancé." Before I could respond, the front door of the house opened, light spilling out onto the driveway. A silhouette appeared, tall, elegant, unmistakably female. "That's my mother," Dante said, straightening his tie. "Remember, from now on, that baby is a Russo, and you belong to me." As he helped me from the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. Playing with fire, indeed. Sophia Russo was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected an aging matriarch draped in black, perhaps with a heavy Italian accent. Instead, the woman who greeted us in the grand foyer was elegant, stylish, and remarkably youthful for someone who must have been in her 60s. "Dante, darling," she said, embracing her son with genuine warmth before turning her sharp gaze on me. "And this must be Eleanor. Mother, this is my fiancée, Eleanor Hayes," Dante said, his arm sliding possessively around my waist. I extended my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Russo." Instead of taking my hand, she pulled me into a surprisingly strong embrace. "We're family now. Call me Sophia." She pulled back, her eyes, the same amber as Dante's, assessing me openly. "Let me look at you." I felt like a prized mare at auction as she studied me, her gaze lingering briefly on my stomach. "Beautiful," she declared finally. "Strong features, good bones. The baby will be handsome." "Thank you," I managed, unsure how else to respond to such a clinical assessment. "Come," she said, linking her arm through mine. "Everyone is waiting in the drawing room." As she led me through the mansion, I tried not to gawk at the obvious wealth on display. Priceless artwork, antique furniture, crystal chandeliers. Dante followed closely behind, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. The drawing room was occupied by 3 people. Lorenzo, lounging with a drink in hand, a striking young woman I assumed was Valentina, and an older man with hard eyes who could only be Uncle Giorgio. "Everyone," Sophia announced. "This is Eleanor, Dante's fiancée, and the mother of our newest Russo." Lorenzo raised his glass in mock salute. "Welcome to the family circus, Eleanor. Drink?" "She's pregnant, idiot," Valentina said, rising gracefully to greet me. Unlike her mother's warmth, her embrace was perfunctory. "Congratulations," she added, though her tone suggested it was anything but. Uncle Giorgio didn't bother to stand. "So this is the girl who trapped my nephew," he said, his accent thicker than Sophia's. "Pretty enough, I suppose." "Giorgio," Sophia warned. "Mind your manners." Dante's arm tightened around me. Eleanor didn't trap anyone. The baby was a mutual surprise, but a welcome one. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel Valentina's resentment, Giorgio's suspicion, and Lorenzo's amusement, all directed at me. Sophia, apparently oblivious to the undercurrents, guided me to a sofa. "Sit, dear. You must be tired. Pregnancy is exhausting. I remember it well. 3 children nearly killed me." She shot a pointed look at Lorenzo. "Especially that one. Breech birth. 36 hours of labor. Always glad to make an entrance," Lorenzo quipped, refilling his glass. Dinner was served in a formal dining room that could have accommodated 20. I sat at Dante's right hand, with Sophia at the head of the table. The conversation flowed around me, much of it in Italian, which I didn't speak. Whenever I caught Dante's eye, he offered a reassuring smile, his hand occasionally covering mine on the table. "So, Eleanor," Giorgio said during a lull, "Dante tells us you were a waitress. At Salvatore's, was it?" The way he said it made it sound like I'd been working in a brothel. "Yes, that's where we met." "How romantic," Valentina drawled. My brother, falling for the help. Dante's knuckles whitened around his fork. "Watch yourself, Valentina." "What?" she protested. "I'm only saying what everyone's thinking. She's pregnant with your child after what, 6 months of dating? And suddenly there's a ring on her finger?" "That's enough," Sophia said sharply. "Eleanor is carrying my grandchild. She will be treated with respect." I placed my hand on Dante's arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "It's all right," I said quietly. "I understand their skepticism." It was a whirlwind romance. "See, even she admits it," Giorgio muttered. "Tell us, Eleanor," Lorenzo interjected, clearly enjoying the drama. "What was it about my brother that swept you off your feet? His charming personality, his winning smile, or perhaps his, substantial assets?" The innuendo wasn't subtle. "Actually," I said, surprising myself with my steady voice, "it was his kindness." The table fell silent, all eyes on me. "Kindness?" Giorgio repeated incredulously. "Yes." I looked directly at Dante, finding strength in his intense gaze. The night we met, I'd been fired. I was alone, pregnant, scared. Dante could have ignored me or taken advantage. Instead, he offered help with no strings attached. It wasn't entirely untrue. He had offered help when I needed it most, even if his motives weren't as pure as I was suggesting. He made me feel safe for the first time in months. I turned to face the table. I know how this looks. Poor waitress snags rich businessman. Surprise pregnancy, quick engagement. But I'm not after Dante's money or his name. I just want to give my child the stability I never had growing up. The silence that followed was profound. Even Lorenzo seemed taken aback by my honesty. Sophia was the first to speak. "Well said, my dear." She raised her glass. "To Eleanor, and to my future grandchild. May they both bear the Russo name with pride." The toast was echoed around the table, though Valentina merely wet her lips without drinking. After dinner, while the men retreated to Dante's father's study for what Sophia called business talk, she led me to a sunroom filled with family photographs. "You handled yourself well tonight," she said, pouring tea from a silver service. "Better than I expected." "Thank you, I think." She smiled, the expression softening her aristocratic features. It was a compliment. This family, it's not easy to marry into. The name comes with certain expectations, certain dangers. "Dangers?" I repeated, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. "Don't play innocent, Eleanor. You're smarter than that." She handed me a cup of tea. "You know what my son is, what this family is." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "It's all right," she said. "We don't speak of it directly. That's rule number 1. But I want you to understand what you're getting into." "I think I do," I said carefully. "No, you don't. Not yet." She sat beside me, her eyes, so like Dante's, fixed on mine. My husband was a monster, brilliant in business, ruthless with enemies, but a monster at home. He had Appetites. For violence. For other women. She sipped her tea. I endured it for my children. For the name. For the security it provided. I'm sorry, I said, genuinely moved by her candor. Don't be. When he died, I shed no tears. She set down her cup with a delicate clink. Dante is not his father. He has his ruthlessness, his intelligence, but not his cruelty. Still, this life changes people, hardens them. Why are you telling me this? Because I see the way my son looks at you. She reached out, her cool fingers wrapping around my wrist. It's how his father once looked at me. Before the power consumed him, a chill ran through me. Dante and I. Our arrangement is, spare me the lies, child. Her grip tightened. I know my son didn't meet you 6 months ago. I know this engagement is sudden and convenient. What I don't know is whether you're good for him. I swallowed hard. I don't think anyone has worried about what's good for Dante in a long time. Her eyes widened in surprise, then crinkled with genuine amusement. Perhaps you understand more than I gave you credit for. She released my wrist. My son needs someone who sees him clearly. Not just the power, the name, the money, but the man beneath. I'm trying, I admitted. Good. She stood, smoothing her impeccable dress. Now, one last piece of advice. In this family, appearances matter. If you're going to pretend to be in love with my son, do it convincingly. Before I could respond, the door opened and Dante entered. Everything all right in here? Sophia smiled. Just getting to know your lovely fiancé. She kissed his cheek as she passed. Don't keep her up too late. Pregnant women need their rest. When she was gone, Dante turned to me. What did she say to you? Nothing I couldn't handle. I set down my teacup. Your mother is formidable. She likes you. He seemed surprised. I can tell. Really? How? She didn't threaten to have you investigated. His mouth quirked in what might have been a genuine smile. That's practically a warm welcome in this family. The drive back to Manhattan was quiet, both of us lost in thought. I replayed the evening in my mind. The barely concealed hostility from Valentina, Giorgio's suspicion, Lorenzo's suggestive comments, and most of all, Sophia's warnings. When we reached the building, Dante insisted on walking me to my door. You did well tonight, he said as we rode the elevator. Better than well. You impressed them. Even Valentina, I asked dryly. She'll come around. She's protective of me, that's all. He studied my face. Are you all right? You've been quiet. Just tired. It was a lot to take in. We reached my door, and I fumbled with the key card, suddenly nervous. Dante took it gently from my trembling fingers, opening the door himself. Eleanor, he said softly as I stepped inside. Thank you for tonight. I turned to face him, struck again by how devastatingly handsome he was, and how dangerous. I was just doing my job. No. He stepped closer, into my space. What you said at dinner, about my kindness, that wasn't part of the job. Heat rose to my face. I needed to say something convincing. Is that all it was? His eyes searched mine. Just a convenient lie? The air between us seemed to crackle with electricity. I don't know what you want me to say, Dante. The truth would be nice. His voice dropped lower. Do you feel safe with me, Eleanor? Really? I should have lied. Should have maintained the professional boundary I'd insisted on. Instead, I found myself admitting, yes, I do. Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. You shouldn't. I'm not a good man. I know what you are, I said quietly. I've always known. And yet you're still here. His hand rose to cut my cheek. Why? Because you're right. I do feel safe with you. Safer than I've felt in a long time. I closed my eyes briefly, leaning into his touch, and that terrifies me. His thumb traced my lower lip. Tell me to leave, Eleanor. Tell me this is just business, just a job, and I'll walk away right now. I knew I should. Knew that crossing this line would change everything. But as I looked into his amber eyes, I couldn't form the words. Instead, I rose onto my toes and pressed my lips to his. Unlike the calculated kiss in the car, this one started gentle, hesitant. His arms encircled me carefully, mindful of my pregnancy, drawing me against the solid warmth of his chest. When I parted my lips, inviting him deeper, he groaned, a sound of surrender that matched the collapse of my own resistance. "Eleanor," he murmured against my mouth, "you're playing with fire." I smiled, my fingers threading through his hair, "So I've been told." As he lifted me into his arms and carried me toward the bedroom, I knew there would be consequences for this choice. Dante Russo was dangerous, powerful, connected to a world I barely understood. But for tonight, at least, I would embrace the fire instead of fearing the burn, because sometimes the most dangerous path is also the one that leads you home.